Hi everybody. So it's been a while since I've posted anything. It's been a little over a month. Needless to say, I've been busy with my own life and have not had a lot of time to work on the YouTube channel. But I do have a good handful of videos that I'm making and am planning to release here in the coming days. So hopefully I can pick this back up and hopefully I don't have to take as big of a break as I just did. But ignoring that, today I'm going to be reviewing one of the most anticipated movies of the year and one of the biggest, it seems like so far, Joker. So Joker is the newest DC movie about the origin story of Batman's most famous villain. Joaquin Phoenix stars as Arthur Fleck, a mentally disturbed sideshow clown who lives with his overbearing mother and has aspirations of becoming a stand-up comedian. Now, this movie is written and directed by Todd Phillips, who is most famous for the Hangover trilogy and Old School. That's kind of his move into legitimate drama after a mixture of comedy and drama with War Dogs. Now, to jump right into the best part of this movie, it is Joaquin Phoenix. He is phenomenal as Joker. He's an actor I've always been a fan of, and I kind of discovered him through, I believe, Walk the Line when I was a lot younger. And then, of course, Signs and Parenthood and Gladiator, and then have kind of kept track of what he's been doing ever since then, because I really enjoy seeing him in movies in general. And I think he's one of the most interesting actors working today. And he does have a tendency to choose very diverse and different roles than most A-list actors would choose. So this movie was right up his alley. And you can tell that a lot of thought went into his performance in this movie, from some obvious things like his weight loss, and they wrote his laugh to be an actual disability he has when he gets overly emotional or anxious, which I liked because it was something very different for the Joker and it kind of makes sense. So it works for him. All the way to subtle things like just his vocal tics and the way he kind of walks and runs, because you'll see throughout the movie that even when he's not in his sideshow clown uniform, which has the large clown shoes, he still runs like he's wearing clown shoes, which is a cool little detail in the movie. A couple more things I really like about this movie is its cinematography and its score. The cinematography is very, very romantically shot. It makes the movie feel very intimate. It has a lot of warm colors and a very nice color palette in general. The movie looks absolutely fantastic. It's great cinematography. It looks amazing on that front. The score is also great. I found the score to be one of the most engrossing parts of the movie, but from a visual and a musical standpoint, this movie is fantastic. I do, however, have a couple problems with this movie. Now, this movie is very obviously inspired by Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. The filmmakers have straight up said that it was inspired by those two Scorsese movies. And while I think it's always good and cool to pull inspiration from other movies and other entertainment, I also think it's the biggest problem with the movie. It does feel like it's trying to kind of be a Scorsese movie and kind of be like Taxi Driver quite a bit. And it has some very blatant references, which didn't really bother me or anything, but there were some times where it leaned a little too hard on that. And then of course you have like Robert De Niro is in the movie, and he's kind of in the Jerry Lewis role from The King of Comedy, which is kind of cool, but then again, it kind of contributes to that pulling a lot of inspiration from those movies. Now this can be seen kind of as an homage to Scorsese, but it almost feels more derivative than anything. And Scorsese was actually attached to this movie for a while when it was kind of in development and everything, but of course he didn't make it. as most people know, but still. And while I do say that it's pulling some from Scorsese's filmography, it's also pulling quite a bit from other stuff. One main thing it's pulling from is the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel by Frank Miller, where it's kind of copying significant plot points from that novel that are very entertaining and everything, and it works well, but I already know about those plot points and know what's going to happen. And if you've read The Dark Knight Returns, then you know too. And while this last thing is kind of more nitpicky on my part, this movie is very, very similar to Lynn Ramsey's You Were Never Really Here, which came out last year, about a year and a half ago, in which Joaquin Phoenix has a significant weight change, and he plays a mentally disturbed man who has violent tendencies and lives with his ill mother. And a big thing with that movie is that a lot of people compared that to Taxi Driver, calling it the modern day Taxi Driver last year. So it feels like the same conversation for Joaquin Phoenix as it did a year and a half ago with that movie. And while I do think that Joker is a fairly well thought out character study, I do think that this descent into madness because of society thing has been done better, obviously with Taxi Driver, but another Paul Schrader written and directed movie that came out last year, First Reformed, I thought gave a much better insight and example of that descent into madness, and I thought that it was a much more well-rounded script and direction and everything. So to kind of get to the point of what my main criticism of this movie is, the movie feels so similar to so many other things that I think that a lot of its originality really strains with that. And while I do love Joaquin's performance, I do feel like it's almost a little bit of a stretch to call him the Joker from the comics, because the Joker from the comics, while he is insane and he's done very, very insane things, he always seems to have a plan behind it. This Joker does not feel like it has much of a plan, and overall this isn't really something that I'm going to include as an actual criticism of the movie. It's more nitpicky on my part, and I just kind of want to get that stream of thought out. And of course this is supposed to be Joker's origin, and you do see some things throughout the movie that Joker or Arthur does that are pretty similar to what he will do in the comics, and his personality and his tics. But I almost feel like this movie could have been very easily changed to another villain in kind of his unhingedness from the Batman universe. I do think this movie could have easily been a Victor Zsasz origin movie too, and I know a lot of people are going to get irritated about that, but I feel like that character could easily just tweak a couple things with the plot and the name and everything and what happens. It could easily be a Victor Zsasz origin story too. But I do think that this is a good movie. Don't get me wrong, I'll probably end up buying this movie once it comes out on Blu-ray. But I do see a lot of people throwing around the word masterpiece for this movie, and while I do think it's awesome that people are really liking this movie, it's not quite on that level for me. And I've taken a good amount of time to think about this movie because I saw it a week and a half ago, and this is the first time I've even attempted to do the review for it. Now, something I do commend this movie for is for being very different than most other comic book movies, because one of the biggest problems with comic book movies is that it'll come out, people will either really like it or just not like it at all and move on. This movie has had a little bit of controversy around it, of course, which luckily nothing bad has happened with that, so I'm not even going to really get into that. But this movie does have people talking. It has a lot of people kind of arguing about it and everything, but they're discussing it. And I do like that about movies, when movies actually get people to talk about the movies and look into it and everything, because I think that that's a better sign of a good movie than just kind of the cookie cutter ones that we get a lot of the time. I do appreciate this movie for what it is, but I personally don't have this over sensationalized love for it that a lot of people seem to. I did enjoy the movie, but as far as R-rated comic movies go, I do still think that Logan and Deadpool are better than this. But overall, I enjoyed Joker. I'll probably see it again at some point. I think it's a phenomenal performance by Joaquin Phoenix. I won't be surprised if he slips in to the awards race, maybe to the Oscars. We'll see whether or not he gets there. It would be pretty significant if he could. But I enjoyed the movie, and I'm going to be rating Joker an 8.5 out of 10. Now, what did you guys think about it? Do you think it's a masterpiece and love it and everything, or did you think it was incredibly disappointing, or whatever, or just didn't want to watch it, or whatever? Let me know, and I'll be back with another video.